yeah, she can entangle my theory anytime. You know what I'm saying?
If it ain't made by me, fuck off.
A B C D E F G.
HIJKLMNOP. Hey guys, welcome to Let's Talk. This is Harps, and the guy not speaking is John. Hey guys, welcome to Let's Talk. This is Harps,
And this is John.
and today we're going to be talking about the multiverse. John has a few things to say, so I'll let John start off.
Well, we always discuss the news first of all. I suppose the biggest news so far has been the migration crisis in the EU. That has
Oh yeah.
been the centre of every news story all across the nation and across the EU as well. Um, I don't know where to start with it really. It's a crisis that has many moving parts and it's quite complex as well. Like for example, uh, the Slovakian Prime Minister said that up to 95% of the migrants could be economic migrants. Those are people that are only moving to other countries to better themselves financially. So,
Wow.
yeah,
That's actually quite crazy. Especially they're just coming here for jobs and stuff, and then the real people are, they're just mixed in with the lot, aren't they?
yeah, they're using the crisis to get into the country basically.
Well,
And
I think they should probably screen people individually.
but how do you screen someone for?
Well, they're obviously going to come in to each border. If they're going to be staying there, then I think that, each individual person should be screened at least and obviously be given a tag. I don't know, like to know exactly where someone's going and how long they can stay. I don't think if they're staying, they should be able to like have residency in the country. I think it should only be temporary until everything gets sorted.
Yeah, that would make sense. Another thing is ISIS have said on many occasions that they plan to flood Europe with IS fighters um, by mixing them in with the migrants that are coming over on the boats. So again, with that, it's very difficult to know who is a terrorist and who isn't.
Yeah,
Um,
but that's another thing as well. Like maybe they should do lie detector tests. I don't know. They should take it to the next level. I think because obviously we're taking people from a country where stuff like this exists.
yeah,
Where all this stuff happens, and we don't really have that here to that sort of level. So I think screening should be very important. I
they
don't know, they should really take it to the next level because I think that the more people that come here, obviously I'm for it. I think people should come here if they're obviously in a country where stuff's going wrong. But obviously you're going to be getting mixed people coming in, people who have bad intentions, people who are here for work, and the people who need a safe place to stay. So they should screen everyone individually and see what's going on, because obviously they need to know. Otherwise, something bad's going to happen eventually, and who do we blame? We can't blame anyone.
It's true, yeah. People are saying that we should perform background checks, but the problem with that is that a lot of people are coming from third world countries and they don't have systems like we do where we have our working history, employment history, where we've come from, birth certificates and things like
Yeah.
that. So things in other countries aren't the same. So you wouldn't really be able to perform a background check because there's no background of that person on any computer system. So
Hmm.
it's extremely difficult.
Yeah,
I
it's a
don't know
very
how they're going to
sensitive
solve it.
topic.
Yeah,
And the thing is, if anyone does speak about it, they're always seen as like un-humanitarian, or they just seemed as like cruel or something. But I think there needs to be a lot done in this situation because we're getting like hundreds of thousands of people coming from these type of countries, and eventually if something bad does happen, then and anyone does speak up about it, then the people are going to think, oh no, well, it's not their problem. Well, we did accept people without even without even screening them, so obviously something bad's going to happen,
I think there will be. Yeah,
and if
that's
they're part of it.
definitely something will happen in the future, whether it's a year from now or 2 years from now. But I think they will find that this person came over with all the migrants, whether they're a
Hmm.
lone wolf doing a little attack in London or something like that. But I think they'll find that most likely this person came from these countries posing as a migrant or a refugee.
Yeah.
There's a difference between the two. Refugee is
Oh yeah,
somebody
for sure.
fearing for their lives and needs to get out of the country or they're going to die. And a migrant is somebody who is leaving their country because they can't get good opportunities there. and
Hmm.
things like that. But it's
Yeah,
a big topic, and it's not going to be solved overnight. So it'd be interesting to see how this one plays out.
yeah, for sure.
So technology now, the BlackBerry
Hmm.
Venice, which I'm really excited about. It's
I know
BlackBerry's
you're excited
first.
about
It's BlackBerry's first Android-powered phone, and they should have done this back in 2009 when their market share was slowly going down. That's when they should have done it, not now, because it could be too late. What do you think, Harves? Is it too late for them to recover and get some of that market back?
Yes. Well, no. Let's think about this for a second. They've come into a very, very crowded environment right now because you're getting all these smaller manufacturers like, well, not even small, well, they're becoming very big now, like Huawei, Xiaomi, which is like a Chinese manufacturer who very big in the budget market. So is Huawei. Um, Samsung's going downhill because all the budget manufacturers are taking over their share as well. So they're coming into a market where they might sell a phone for 700, 800 pounds. But if you look at that sector, you've got like the One Plus 2, which is really high spec, has USB Type C, has good amount of RAM, has a good quality screen and stuff for like maybe £350. And,
Yeah.
they're going to be selling a phone that's really high spec with a keyboard. Is a keyboard, the main selling point of this device? And how many people are going to buy it for that high end price? You see what I mean? So that's something to consider. And obviously, you've got all these smaller other manufacturers, and they can just keep cutting costs. They don't really make high margins on their phones. They make small margins, but they sell a lot of phones.
Well, for people who don't know about the phone industry, like in much depth, those phones that Harps is talking about, the low cost ones, but with the same sort of specs, are called flagship killers, and they're designed to be cheaply made, but have the same specs and the same sort of stuff than what the big phones do have as well, but they just don't have the
Yeah,
brand name.
and the thing is, they're not even cheaply made. But the One Plus 2 has a metal band around the whole phone, so it feels premium.
Yeah,
You know,
it does look good,
it's
that
got
phone.
exactly, and most people aren't really going to need like a 2K screen. They're going to need a 1080p screen and good battery life, and that's what these cheaper manufacturers are able to do.
So with BlackBerry, they're teaming up with Samsung to produce the curved screen, which you can see in the Edge, the new handset.
Hmm.
So looking at the specs as well, is I think it's 1440p. Um,
Yeah.
it's not 4K, so it's got a better resolution than 1080p. The specs are the same as the LG G4, I think.
Hmm.
It has the same chipset and
Yeah.
things like that. The camera, that's to be seen, but I mean, if you get the camera right, if you get a good camera that works well in the dark, you're already up on some other phones like my phone, the HTC M9. The camera is terrible
Hmm.
in low light conditions, which was a massive mistake.
Hmm. Yeah.
Um, but apparently, the BlackBerry did a market research questionnaire thing, and they found that 60% of Android users who used to have a BlackBerry would go back to BlackBerry if they created an Android device with a keyboard. So there is a
Yeah.
market
Well, that's
for it.
to be seen.
It is to be seen,
That's
but could they possibly? They're at the bottom of the ladder at the moment. They can't go down any further. So the only way is up. Even if it's only one notch up, they're still doing better than what they have been doing.
yeah. Or another phone manufacturer might come up with an Android phone with a keyboard for a cheaper price, and someone might take that. And they've already released smartphones with keyboards. No one buys them. The
Yeah,
only
but
thing
not a
BlackBerry
BlackBerry
really has going
keyboard.
for them is security.
But I'm telling you, when I had a BlackBerry, it was so hard for me to part from that to a HTC M9.
Because we came from a keyboard life. We didn't come from digital screen to digital screen. You have to migrate over.
Yeah, but there is a typing experience on the BlackBerry. I can't stress that enough. And
Well,
this
you
phone is
saw
going
me
to be my
typing
dream
on it
phone.
before. I couldn't even touch the bloody shift keys and the space bars. It's so tiny.
There is a learning curve with that, but um, it can be done. Another phone you
Yeah,
mentioned to me yesterday or the day before was the new Sony phone, which
yeah.
has a 4K screen.
The Z5 Premium.
Yeah, what sort of
Hmm.
market is that aimed at?
Well, some people are saying the market's dying with that because there's more and more people that are, swaying away from, the ultimate spec phones and stuff.
Yeah,
More people are gearing towards, you know, cheaper phones or in general, like as I said, like the OnePlus 2. People are happy with that, and not no one can really see pixels on a 2K screen. Not many people can see pixels on a 1080p screen. Those are the sweet spots. Like flagships at the moment have 2K screens, and obviously 4K is next. Obviously, it's just to show that they're still relevant in the market. I think because
yeah,
Sony didn't have a good future in the past. So in the last year they released the Z3 Plus, Z3 Plus Z, and all that rubbish, and Z4, and that didn't get released here. That I don't think that got released in Japan. And then the Z5 Premium and Z5 and Z5 Compact. So that's the kind of market they have, and they all have the same specs, which is good, and it just shows that they're more relevant in the market today, which I think is really important.
yeah. So I guess that wraps up the news, really. We can get on with the main focus on the show, which is the multiverse theory. We both recently
Oh
watched a
yeah.
documentary called Horizon. It was on BBC Two, um,
Hmm.
and it completely blew our minds with what they were saying. And there was reputable scientists on the show as well. So it wasn't just
Oh yeah.
chucking ideas out there. These are people trying to back up with evidence, which they did find some evidence as well. So I don't know
Yeah.
where we're going to start with this, Harps.
Well, I know I've taken notes and you've taken notes, and so we could
But
just shall I just start off with something?
yeah, you can do. I mean, let's explain what the multiverse theory is as best as we can.
Well, go
Um,
on then, John. Why don't you explain it to me?
After you, Harps.
All right, so a multiverse is one of an infinite number of universes. So, you know, if they explain it in a sense, so you could just think of loads of different bubbles and bubbles and bubbles and bubbles. So it's technically unlimited. And you know how we can say our universe is 3.8 billion years? That's just what we observe in that
13.7
sense.
billion.
Oh, of course, okay. But but in that sense, that's our observable universe. But
Yeah,
we don't know the space after that. So they could be, other universes which are called multiverses. So obviously we'll move on to that
yeah. So
as
basically,
we
the
speak.
idea
But
is that we're one of those bubbles in all of those bubbles. The universe, our universe, is one of those bubbles, but there's an infinite number of those bubbles next to us,
mhm,
and that they all coexist at the same time, sort of thing. But we're getting to that.
yeah.
So, I mean, you take it away. Where do you want to prod first?
Well, there was a professor who spoke about, well, he was building Lego, right? And he was talking about how elementary particles are like the building blocks of the universe. So, which is quite important because if you think about it, when you build something, so it becomes something, right? So if you put all the blocks together, you could probably build a house. So he said something along the lines of they could have like different implications. It could have an infinite number of variations. So, for example, if we use the house theory, so you have the infinite number of blocks and you can make an infinite number of variations of a house. But at the end, there will always be two models of the house that will be exactly the same. So, for example, it would be an identical universe and another identical universe, but there
Yeah,
might be different variations of what will happen in that universe, but they will be exactly the same.
yeah. So that he said also that for our world here, there is another universe with the exact same properties as our universe, and there'll be some that are slightly different, where gravitational pull is slightly less, but it looks exactly the same as ours. So there's an infinite amount of possibilities in that, which is crazy
Yeah,
when you think about it.
yeah. They also spoke about inflation of the universe as well. So they spoke about when the universe doubles in size, it doubles in the fraction of a second. So when the Big Bang happened, and it stretched over the size of the universe, and that's called internal inflation,
Yeah,
which is pretty crazy if you think about it. It just keeps getting bigger and bigger and bigger, but the space between everything is identical.
Yeah, there was also a scientist there. I'll make excerpts of this and add it to the video so you can get a better understanding of what we're talking about. Um, but he was saying that each time you make a decision, say if you toss a coin and heads you go to Thorpe Park and tails you go to Chesington World of Adventures. Each time you do that, the universe splits into two. So
Yeah.
uh, that's part of the multiverse as well, almost like parallel worlds. And each time you make a
Hmm.
decision, that happens. Um, but I was thinking about it earlier, and doesn't this mean that when the universe splits into two, do does my universe interact with yours? So, for example, we both come out of a hotel. No homo. We both come out. We both come out of a
God.
hotel, but on the same street,
Yeah.
but they're next to each other. So I toss a coin, and heads I go right, and tails I go left, and you do exactly the same thing. So
Mm,
when I toss the coin,
yeah.
let me try and make this clearer. Right,
All right. Well, yeah, go
right.
on.
I know
Yeah.
this one's better. Pretend we live next door to each other. Your house is on the left,
Hmm.
mine is on the right, but we're next door neighbours. Um, we both come out to the front of the house, and we have a coin in our hands, and we both toss it. And if it's heads, we both go right, and if it's tails, we both go left. So the when I toss the coin, it's say tails, so I turn left, and you toss the coin, and yours is head, so you turn right. So we've basically made four parallel universes by doing that. But our universes are colliding with each other because me and you are about to bump into each other because we turned into each. Well, you turned right and I turned left. So our universes have collided with each other. If that makes sense.
Mm, I think that's going a bit too complicated because obviously, if we talk about because they spoke about the double split experiment.
Yeah.
So obviously, there's two slits in like a board, and then they send two electrons go through the splits. One electron goes through both slits and makes two patterns, right?
Yeah, which is
So
impossible if you
yeah,
unless you have
yeah. So
multiverses.
yeah. So that theory you said is like pretty cool. I mean, obviously, um, if they collide, we'd probably explode if that if that theory happened.
But I
But
don't mean collide in a physical sense. I just mean that our paths have we've bumped
they
into each
change,
other.
yeah.
So the heads or the tails splits into two, but the one that split to the left and your one that split to the right have crossed paths with each other, and that's how we both went into each other because our decisions was 50-50, and it split
Yeah,
left or
so
right.
it would be like that, yeah. So you'd have a all right, so here's what they said in the show. This might, clear it up for anyone listening. But one of the scientists said, I think it was Professor Seth Lloyd, and he said if you roll an infinite number of dice, you can eventually find the exact universe as ours, but slightly different. He also says it will show us, obviously if we did that, what it might look like in different universes. So, for example, over here, obviously the dinosaurs aren't around, but in another universe, the asteroid missed Earth, and the dinosaurs are still around, and there's other different possibilities. And if we look at history, so history took a different course. So, like Germany could have won the war, and how everything would have changed from there, or somewhere in the universe or in a multiverse um, we're being attacked by aliens right now.
Yeah.
And for example, where I'm elected president, and that's only limited, yeah, and that's only limited by my imagination.
Yeah. So
So,
there's an infinite
so
number of
yeah,
possibilities.
exactly. So when we think of, as you said about the coins, yeah, so if we just think of you flipping a coin, this is from what I understand anyway. So from when you flip a coin, it gives you two probability, heads or tails, yeah, or true or false.
Yeah.
Yeah. So when you do that and you move left, that's another path. So it's a fork.
Yeah,
So
but look at it that way, and you do the exact same when yours forks off to the right, but we both bump into each other. Does that mean our alternative universe is crossing each other?
I don't think so because everyone's got a different path.
Yeah, that's what I don't know. It's complicated.
Everyone's got a different fork because everyone's probability is going to be the different. It's like, for example, if we were walking on a bridge and someone bumps into us with a cup of coffee, it's only going to bump on one of us. It's not going to bump on both of us.
Yeah, but
Or if you get mugged and I walk off, and but if I interfere and help you, that changes your path, as well. So I guess it's a bunch of different probabilities in different universes, but it could also mean that in another universe you might be rich and you might have all the ladies, not like right now, but it's just different probabilities. Like you could be the chairman of Google, for example.
yeah,
So it's just different
and you
things.
you might have
Yeah,
completed your CCNA.
mate, we both know that will never happen
But the
in any
idea
multiverse.
the idea is that there are an infinite number of universes where you could be doing different things. Even if, for example, you punch a wall in another universe, you might have punched it a little bit less, but it's a
Hmm.
different one because it's split. So this is a question that I thought of. If you um, Right, so if we exist in an infinite number of universes, why do we only experience one? So when we die in this universe, do we experience another one? Or is that it?
Well, this is, do you know when we were speaking about that earlier, and I said I'm gonna watch the show and everything, and you know how when people are close to death, they
Yeah.
usually say something like, "Oh, I see so and so in the distance." So this is, I don't know, I was just thinking about this earlier. So what if they do die, but then they just go into another multiverse and just wake up as normal?
Yeah, like what's to stop you from
So their conscience,
experiencing in another universe?
well, they always said something like, if you're very spiritual, like a spiritual person, then your conscience is alive, isn't it? So it could just probably move on to the next. And if we're all particles, then that shouldn't be a problem, would it?
You wouldn't know. If as you say, that test where they shot those photons and was it photons or electrons through the gap, but it
Electron.
appeared in two places at the same
Yeah,
time, even though it was just one. So are the things that make us up, electrons, atoms, photons, can exist in two places at once as well.
yeah. So that would be two separate universes.
Yeah. So I
Yeah,
guess when we die, our consciousness dies, but
we're
perhaps,
all alive somewhere else.
yeah, perhaps the other electrons are experiencing and we move over to that. Who knows, man? But
Yeah,
it offers a new explanation to things
yeah,
in that
exactly.
sense.
And that's Professor Seth Lloyd. He also said something about the laws of physics. So he says about how it will be different. It will differ in different multiverses. So he
Yeah,
said the other multiverses might not have electromagnetic forces. They might have a different knowledge of physics, and they also might be talking about different forces. So like a blue force and a yellow force, but we don't really know anything about that, and how they might have really complicated equations that we can't even think of. So their maths and everything might be all different to ours, but we might
yeah.
be the exact same person.
Yeah, he said a good analogy was that physics students in our dimension will be studying and doing an exam on the physics we know, but in another universe they might be studying different physics altogether, stuff that
Yeah.
they found differently. You know about the cat in the box thing, don't you?
No, I don't think so. You can
If you put a cat in a
let me
box
know.
and you shut the lid, um, is it dead or alive? If you left a gun in there, is it dead or alive? You don't know until you open it and view the wavelength that closes it and says the cat is alive. But you can never
Yeah, that's
know.
actually true.
You can never
So
know
it's a
until
different
you observe
outcome.
it. Yeah. So it doesn't
Yeah.
exist until you observe it. So what I'm saying is,
So yeah,
if we die in this universe, we're not alive any longer to experience it or witness that it exists.
yeah.
So,
Who knows, man? That cat might have thumbs and he might pull the trigger in the box. We don't know.
but well, I guess what I'm saying is, when you die, does this universe just collapse because you're no longer there to witness it?
I personally, I think conscience goes with you because obviously, I don't know, like I've always thought this, but now it's actually it might make a bit of sense. So when someone dies and they say, "Oh, I see, so and so in the distance. I want to be with so and so." But when they're very close to death, then they feel happy for some reason. So they're obviously going somewhere else where that person is alive.
Yeah, but have
And,
you
and
seen?
there's no proof of an afterlife as well. So it's
There's
just an imagination, isn't it?
in a sense, yeah, but they looked at near-death experiences, which I think you're talking about, and at the time of when you're just about to die, your brain releases lots of chemicals to calm you down, and that can bring on, like when you see the white light and you've got to walk into the white light.
Mhm.
That's the direct consequence of that. The chemicals that are in your
Yeah.
brain just before you die.
But it just calms you down so you go quickly.
Yeah, so if you were shot in the head with a sniper bullet, you wouldn't experience that because it'd be so quick and your brain would be destroyed. So it'd just be nothingness, I guess. But we could all be wrong.
Then I guess we teleport to a new multiverse.
Yeah, and live a life as a billionaire and you're the president of Google or something.
Yeah, you just wake up in your like gold bed, like you just wake up with loads of money around you. But there's another thing that we were talking about paths and everything, um, and that professor also said something about the every probability makes two paths where you can only pick one path. So, for example, I could say to you, I'm really hungry, let's go and eat. But then you say no. But in another multiverse, you say, yeah, I'm hungry, let's go and eat. So there's different outcomes for different decisions,
Yeah,
which I think is, important as well. And there's another thing as well. So there's this thing called Hilbert space, and it talks about independent futures. So endless stalking paths and every version of every event happening somewhere.
blimey.
Yeah, so no matter what, because obviously it's a multiverse, it can go. We don't know how long a multiverse goes on for. It could go on forever. So wherever your outcome happens, there's always an outcome for somebody somewhere in that multiverse at any time.
And that's infinite as
So
well,
right
isn't it?
now, yeah, so right now we're talking on here, but in another multiverse, we could be outside speaking on some holographic phone, for example. So, there's an outcome for everything. Something's happening somewhere at a different time
Yeah.
or at the same time. Or in another multiverse, we could be doing the exact same thing, but in a mansion, for example.
It could be, yeah.
Because remember what they said about building blocks and houses, so it could be exactly the same, but something might be slightly different. And I think I don't know if you remember this episode of Simpsons where Homer travels in space with a toaster or travels through time through a toaster, and he goes through different kinds of, I would say, multiverses. This is just popping into my head now, actually. Um, and obviously he goes back and he thinks he's in a normal place with his wife and kids and everything. But they're either in the future or they're in the Stone Age or something like that. And the final one, he thought everything was like really normal. And I think Marge started talking to him and she had a forked tongue and he just thought, meh, and he just starts eating. So he just continues and that's how the episode ends. But it just shows you that could be different multiverses as well,
That yeah, it could
in
be.
a
I think
sense.
I've seen that episode as well. I haven't seen
Yeah,
it
it's
for a
quite
long time,
old.
but yeah. Well,
Yeah.
let me throw a spanner into the works, or let me put
Hmm.
some chili pepper into that bolognese. Um,
Go for it.
how does time travel fit in with the multiverse? If you go back in time, are you still in the same universe or another one?
Well, John, I think I have an answer for you.
Really?
Well, Professor Laura Mersini Houghton, she's obviously been working on a combined string theory with quantum mechanics, and she's been working on how our multiverse could be tied into another multiverse. And like the space of our universe, obviously we have a map of our universe, don't we? Of the observable universe.
Yeah,
And if we put that on a map, it's like an oval shape. But there's a thing that she calls the white space. I think it's called the white space, and it's called a cold spot. Sorry, so it's the part outside of the universe map, and it could be when our universe was connected to another. So that could be another thing. And there's another thing called crosstalk that she spoke about as well, and it speaks about all surviving universes were connected at one point, and somehow some of them became independent. So that could also mean that if some universes are connected, we could actually move through different universes. And remember how I don't know if we spoke about this before, but how different dimensions could exist, so we could get to the 10th dimension. Maybe these all link together as well. How time travel and space travel and so all link
Yeah,
through
but
conscience.
I just wonder what would happen. Say if me and you got into a time capsule and went back 1,000 years, would we still be in the same universe, or would we be in another one that's 1,000 years ago? Would we have jumped over to a different universe where that is a possibility of that exact history happening?
Um,
Please
this is
answer.
probably a little bit off
Please, sir.
course. Please answer me, Hannah. Um, but all right, so I'm gonna throw this off a little bit. Yeah, so I'm gonna
All right, go for it. Yeah.
throw a ball. But you know, Planet of the Apes. There was a movie I think released in 2000 and something. It had Mark Wahlberg in it. I think it did, anyways. I
Yes,
think I'm
I've
not
seen
sure.
it. It's a good film.
Yeah, and you know how he flies into space at one point, and then the transmission goes wrong, and he gets put into a wormhole, right? And then he gets sent to another part in another world or something. He lands in the world with all the monkeys and everything. But then when that monkey sees her, he lands, and then Mark Wahlberg jumps into the capsule and flies off. He jumps in, flies off, goes back in the wormhole, and goes back to Earth. But that could be in a different multiverse. But the thing is, another sense, it could be that you need to be flying at the exact same speed that you were coming through, the exact same coordinates at the exact same time. So it could be that you never ever go back to where you're going to.
Yeah, and he
It's just
didn't, did
it's
he?
just different. No, he went to a world where all the monkeys and gorillas and everything, they were literally like, you know, like humans in a sense.
Yeah, they have been the one
So
that
there
had.
were no humans.
Yeah, they were the ones that were intelligent and managed to progress and evolve.
Yeah, exactly. So that could be another multiverse. I don't know. I thought I'd throw a curveball there,
That
but
yeah,
it,
that's a good point because for him there was no way of getting back. He was stuck there unless he wanted to go somewhere else. He could only go somewhere else. He couldn't go back to what he previously knew. So that would be a different
yeah,
universe.
yeah. So he obviously thought he was going back to where he was coming from by following the coordinates, but he was probably at a different time, or he probably escaped through a different wormhole to a different multiverse. And they always said wormholes are just tears in space, aren't they? So
Yeah,
that could be different universes connected.
yeah, that's a
This is
good
just stuff
point.
that is just popping into my head right now.
Yeah,
I'm
it's
just,
good because I mean,
you know,
films do explore this as well, and some of them could be, like teleportation in Star Trek and stuff like that. Michio Kaku
hmm
says that we can teleport atoms at the moment, so things that were in films years ago can be done now to a certain extent, and maybe in the future,
yeah,
holograms and stuff like that were seen
hmm
40 years ago on TV. It was like, oh, holograms, but now we have holograms and 3D holograms and things like that.
yeah,
Um, so I mean, films do explore these possibilities, and I guess they're just people that wanting to explore what it would be like to do these things, and science is always trying to prove these things as well. So they all tie in with each
yeah,
other. So it's a good point you raised there with
yeah.
that film.
I thought I'd mention it because obviously, I've thought about it before, and loads of people on the internet do theories about it and think, oh, what actually happened in that movie, and if it did happen in real life. And there's a lot of science behind it, but the director of the movie, he's never really talked about it.
Yeah,
So I guess it leaves people to their own imagination.
yeah, it's true. Um, Trying to think of other films. I mean, Interstellar sort of explores it. It goes through a black hole and it ends up
hmm
somewhere else. And when he comes back, which I don't know if you can ever come back, but his daughter is now really old and she's on her deathbed.
Well, he entered the fifth dimension, didn't he?
Yeah, which It did quite well to visualize it because obviously we can't
Yeah,
see the
because
fifth
you,
dimension, so they have to try and
yeah, how do you think what it looks like,
yeah,
you know? And there's a clip. Well, you know when I showed you the ten dimensions, I don't know if you want to put the video in the description about
yeah,
the
I
ten
will do because
dimensions.
that's complicated. The longer it goes
Yeah,
on, the harder it gets to grasp. But
yeah,
it's brilliant.
exactly.
It is
So the
brilliant.
fifth dimension is pretty much how you see time. So you could see what's happening in your time, technically. Um, and he's looking through the time to see when an exact moment happens. So he could actually move through his space and time. He can't exactly go back to that point, but he can interact with that point. So leaving messages and stuff. But the 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 moral of that is that you know how we were talking about flicking coins? That moment will always happen from
Yeah.
that point. He will always go back to that point.
Oh, I see what you mean now. Yeah. Is that
So
he
that
was
that point is set in stone.
in the film? He was manipulating the dust, wasn't he, on the floor or the sand falling or something in a
Yeah.
certain way?
So yeah, so he manipulated it. So that point, yeah, this is what I'm thinking now. So I guess that point he's manipulated to an extent. So that point would always happen. But remember when we were talking about the fork, how you can have two different opportunities, and one changed in another multiverse, and one will always be the same, but he's changed the path in another.
Yeah.
So he probably went back to another multiverse, and where his daughter's old and everything, and where her equation actually worked.
Ah, yeah. That's true. Yeah.
Because they were talking about her equation and she never finished it,
Yeah.
or that old man's equation and never finished it. But the equation may have finished. They may have sorted out all their problems.
But that was a brilliant film. That I
Yeah, it was
like films like
amazing.
that that make you think. There was another film. Actually, I suppose Gravity. You've seen Gravity, haven't you?
Yeah,
That's not real. It's not like Interstellar in that way. But it
it
is a good
wasn't
film.
all that. I don't think.
I
I
really
don't know. I
enjoyed
just.
it. I thought it was quite an emotional experience. I didn't cry or anything. I was I was alright. But
You sure, John?
but when you
I bet
said
you
to
ordered
me
a box of Kleenex from Amazon or something. But
but when you said to me that you didn't like it, I thought, what? I thought it was really good. But I mean, it's a different experience to Interstellar. Interstellar really makes you think, and it's like, oh my god. But Gravity was
yeah,
more like an emotional ride.
yeah. I guess Interstellar is more of a scientific movie.
Yeah, oh,
It
definitely,
it
yeah.
describes how time on another planet impacts time in like our life, for example. So how 20 years went past when they came back off that planet and they were only there for like 5 minutes.
Yeah.
Say how fast that planet is moving, and then when they leave, they go back and he goes, "Oh, I was just doing a couple stretch." How you know exactly. So I mean, if I was waiting 20 years, I wouldn't be waiting 20 years. I would have flown off by now. But I would have left you on that damn planet, John.
Have you seen Oblivion with Tom
Um,
Cruise?
no, I haven't. I
Okay.
probably have. I probably don't
Um,
remember.
that kind of, if I can remember rightly, that there was multiple versions of him, and he kept seeing himself. So that I wonder if they thought that the multiverse could come into one, so he could see multiple versions of himself. But I wonder if there's a universe where humanity has advanced so much that they can harness energy and manipulate their own universe to the extent where they can visualize the one next to them.
That's probably very possible because, as one of the professors said on the he says that they have different knowledge of physics, so they may be able to harness different types of forces, or they may not have a certain force, but they have the forces which will make them do different things. So,
Yeah.
that could happen, and it depends on how far they are technology wise. I mean, as like let's just say in a multiverse where, all right, let's talk about ours, yeah.
Hmm.
We're in a really bad situation with Earth at the moment. We're gonna have loads of wars eventually and everything. But in another multiverse, they might be so peaceful and the whole world might be all technology based and everyone's pushing technology. So they may be so far ahead that they may not even be using, um, fossil fuels. They may be all renewable and they may be able to harness like a star's energy, for example, to power their own planet.
But
So they could be able to do stuff like that.
but they will still be using Blackberries, I'd imagine, because it's a superior phone. Continue.
Next question.
um, with this, the multiverse, I don't know if it's all so hard to describe. You, they say that the multiverse, there's another version of me that's president at the moment, but
Hmm.
are all the multiverses at the same time period, or are some 2 billion years in the future, where on that universe I existed 2 billion years ago instead of what I'm experiencing now? Are they all
I,
time? Are they all at the
yeah.
same time, or are some
Well,
ahead and some are further back?
yeah. Well, if you think about the double split experiment that they did, they sent one particle through two slits, sorry, and they both hit the same target at the same time. So that would be at the same time. And then let's just say if you had a different outcome, they would be at the same time. So it would always be at the same time.
So they
So it would
okay.
always fork. There'll always be two different things. So I think that happens at the same time. I don't think they're at different times.
So there
But if
won't
we're talking about different, like, yeah, go on.
so there won't be a universe where I'm 68 years old at the moment.
I don't think
I'll
so.
always be
I
the
don't know.
same
We can't
age
really
throughout them.
think about that. Yeah, because your situation would vary, wouldn't it? Like, yeah, what your outcome is now wouldn't change an outcome in, or you wouldn't be able to change your outcome in like 60 years time right now. It would be changing right when it happens in a different multiverse.
Yeah. So in a way, it's all synced, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
sort of time synced. So I would be
but
the same age in
it's,
every one, but different circumstances.
yeah, unless you change, let's just say if you, let's just say if you walk down an alleyway and you got mugged, but that's your own choice to walk down the alleyway, but you could have walked down the main road. That and in 50 years time you time travel to that situation and you might be a different person.
Yeah.
You might not be the same person you would have been if you followed the path that was on the main road, but it always changes. um that's why people say you should follow your instincts. So or just think for yourself, because that would be your own probability, wouldn't it?
But are your instincts predetermined?
Well, they're a part of you, aren't they? So for example, if your instinct, so let's say we're at the bar, yeah, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to speak to that girl. And by the time you get to her, some other guy just went over there and talked to her. And then you're like, okay, cool, I'm just going to go back. I'm going to just moonwalk it back. See, that's your thing changed. But in another multiverse, you could have probably spoken to that girl.
Well, I would have,
And,
and
and you,
I would have said, "How much does a polar bear weigh?" And I'll say enough to break the ice. I'll say, "Hi, I'm Joan," and she'll give me her number.
yeah, I bet that works. I bet that works a lot, doesn't it?
All the
But,
time.
but you understand what I mean? So
Yeah, yeah,
different things could happen at different times. So, for example, like I could be your wingman now, but in another multiverse, you could have argued with me and I wouldn't be your wingman and you would have never spoken to that girl.
yeah.
So that changes your thing. You in one unit multiverse, you could have been married to that woman, but in another multiverse, you could be married to a girl who lives in a trailer named Abigail, and you'd have 13 kids with the same name. So,
Same name. They're creative.
but that's something to think about.
Yeah,
So I guess the moral of the story is follow your instincts.
and always have harps as your wingman.
Yeah, because if you don't, you're never gonna get anything. You're always gonna have kids with the same name.
Right. So, does the future, present, and past exist at the same time? And if it has the future already happened? And if so, the present is predetermined by the future.
Mother of God. Um,
Sorry,
that's
sorry to
difficult
chuck that
cookie
one
to
out
crack,
there.
man.
Didn't mean to chuck that one at your face.
If you don't mind. Um, that's difficult because obviously that interferes with time travel as well. So you're trying to say if we can change our moment in the future, or we if something happens at the same time? I'm
Well,
kind of
say
confused now.
say if the future has already happened, because if you can time travel, you can time travel to the future. So that means you're
Mm.
experiencing the future before it's even happened in the present. So that means that it all exists at the same time, I think. So
Well,
so if
I
I
don't
drop
know.
this phone, if I drop my phone on the floor on purpose, that was predetermined in the future. So I would have no choice but to drop the phone. Any action you do is predetermined in a sense. That's an argument. It's not a fact. I mean, how could you ever prove that unless you can go to the
Um,
future?
it's difficult because obviously we're going back to the fork, isn't it? So we're going to be obviously doing two different things, and even if you go into time travel, it depends what you've changed at that time to change you in the future, and you wouldn't even know if anything's changed in the future. You
Yeah,
just know that you're an old man, and that's it. You might still have the same hobbies. You might have changed your hobbies. You know, you might be into croquet. You might not be into DJ and stuff like that.
yeah.
So, so I don't think you'd ever know. In the past, like, how would you know? You wouldn't be able to change anything in the past because there'll be probabilities. But the only probability that would probably occur when you're little is if you run down the street, you could either fall on your face or you could keep running, and those would be random probabilities, I think.
Yeah. So the last topic, which is quite a big one in a sense, is well, I'll play the extract now, and you guys can have a listen.
The idea that all of this is completely mathematical sounds pretty nutty at first, since it doesn't seem mathematical at all. But actually, when we look closer, there's mathematics everywhere. Here we see some beautiful mathematical circles forming, and whose spreading over the water is perfectly described by a mathematical equation called the wave equation. This tree here doesn't look very mathematical at first sight, but if we look really closely at this bark, it's made of cells that are made of molecules, that are made of atoms, that are made of quarks and electrons. And as far as we can tell, neither the electrons nor the quarks nor any of the other particles that make up all of this have any properties at all, except for mathematical properties.
And so after you've listened to that, it explains that electrons, photons, atoms, all these um, micro things that make up the universe have no properties whatsoever apart from maths. And the guy,
Yeah.
he said that the maths is everywhere, and video games are a direct example of it. So, for example, in a game, you make a polygon and you create a character like Shrek, and
And it has coordinates.
yeah, and you change the numbers in it, the maths of the polygons, and it makes him fatter or smaller or a different color. And that's the same in this world as well. Everything is maths. So it makes you think
Yeah.
whether we can create a virtual world and a simulated universe with maths and numbers, and we're simulating what's happening right in front of us. So is this all simulated, Harps?
And that's the end of the show, folks. I'm joking. um, I don't know, man. It's really hard to tell because obviously you determine if you're going to be fat or skinny.
Yeah, but if you look at everything you do, it's all maths. Your bone structure can only be explained by maths. If I throw something at a wall, it makes a noise. You can explain that by maths. Everything is maths. Everything. It's all created by
And I
maths.
always thought maths was useless at school.
And it's
Yeah.
amazing how in a video game like Battlefield 3, for example, or DayZ or Contagion, if you guys know what that is, that's been created by maths. The effects that you see, the visual stuff, is all numbers and figures added together and subtracted to create an effect. And
And
that's
physics as well, yeah.
and physics. That's exactly what you see when you see a light, do you remember the light thing? You see a candle in the distance. You're not seeing a candle, you're seeing data that's being interpreted by your brain and eyes to create an image.
Yeah.
And it's
'Cause we
all
have a black
figures and
space in
numbers.
our brain.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll put a link
And
to
the
that
thing is,
video
it's
as
a
well.
big black. Yeah, yeah, exactly. All right, I won't say much about that. You got to watch the video
That's
first.
crazy, guys. It's absolutely crazy.
Quantum computing. So in the video, they did speak about quantum computing and how powerful something that is quantified can be compared to a normal computer. And they spoke about the different kinds of bits. So in a normal computer, you'd have zeros and ones, or true and false, or something like that, I guess. But quantum computing could have true and false, zeros, ones, and they will always happen at the same time rather than doing it one at a time. So quantum computing is a hell of a lot, more efficient and faster than a usual computer. And doing quantum computing through different multiverses, so that's a different thing. So how do they get the data, and how does it get all that data into a small computer that can be so powerful? So it breaks up the possible factors of a number and then recombines it and gives you an answer. So a normal computer would take like 512 bits. It would take them more than the age of the universe to give us the answer, whereas a quantum computer could do it instantly.
And what I'll do is I'll play the excerpt from the documentary right now.
So a quantum computer is like a regular computer, but really, really small. That is the bits of the computer, so the places where you store information are individual atoms or individual elementary particles like photons or electrons.
No, it does.
An ordinary digital computer processes information by busting up the information to its smallest pieces, which are called bits. So a bit is the smallest chunk of information. It only has two possibilities, which are usually called 0 or 1, but they could also be yes or no, heads or tail, true or false. So a quantum computer also divides up information to bits, but now they're quantum bits. So if I have an electron that can be over here, we call that 0, or over here, we call that 1. So this quantum bit or qubit, in some weird, funky quantum way that nobody really understands, registers 0 and 1 simultaneously. And this gives quantum computers a power that ordinary classical computers don't have.
Because quantum computers have the ability to operate in many states at once, performing a staggering number of calculations at the same time, some believe these calculations are taking place in parallel worlds.
Some people believe that quantum computers already prove the existence of the multiverse. They say that the quantum computer is doing all these different computations in different worlds, and then to get the answer to the question, it recombines all this information from these different worlds to give you the answer.
Basically what we're saying is that the quantum computer, they think, gathers data from multiverses to come up with the number, because there's no possible way that it could calculate everything in this universe. So they think that it gathers data and does the equations in other universes at the same time, which is why it's so quick and can gather everything together. And as Harp said, it would take a normal computer like we have on our desk at the age of the universe to calculate these numbers, but this one can do it very, very quickly in a matter of seconds. So it's quite incredible to think that quantum computers work in multiple universes, which is proof of the multiverse in a sense.
Yeah. I mean, I heard about quantum computers like 5+ years ago, but that was at like some really infant stage of computing, and I never thought much about it. I thought, you know what, that's going to be the next stage of our computers in like 10 years time or something.
Yeah.
But we're still here. We're at the normal computers, and I guess, we're finally coming to a stage where quantum computers are more of a science thing right now, rather than a more of a your personal computing stage. Because we're going to be at a quantum computing stage eventually, but at the moment it's about learning where the power comes from.
Yeah, I mean, mastering the technology so that Intel in 30 years can create their first quantum chip that can go into your quantum computer and can run any single game possible. And you can imagine the graphics and what it can render Imagine all the amount of information it could render. It'd be immense. Absolutely loads of
Yeah.
information.
You wouldn't even have an i5, i3, i7. You'd have a Q3, Q5, Q7. You know, it would be something like that. Or you might even have one chip that does everything, and it might be 1 megahertz frequency, but it might be able to power everything you need. I don't know. That's just, it could be, you know, heatless. Like there'll be no heat. There won't be, you know, any like real sound coming from it or anything. It would just work instantly. Like right now, we get extra power from the cloud. So if we, like on the Xbox, more physics comes from the cloud. So if you're not connected to the internet, you're not going to get more of that physics. You're just going to get basic physics.
Yeah, that's true.
So, yeah, so, you know, at the moment we rely on the cloud, but what if we rely on quantum? We might be able to even simulate our own worlds.
But yeah, but
You
can
know,
you
like,
imagine?
like holodecks. Like imagine that holodecks in Star Trek. They used to show that on the TV. How you could just flick a switch and it will become reality, and then you flick the switch off and it becomes fake. Like it just becomes it just becomes real life again.
But
you can actually interact with a holodeck.
Yeah, but if you're using quantum processors, for example, and you're playing Battlefield 20, which is like real life, can you imagine that in another universe we're actually manipulating their universe, and they're thinking, what the hell is happening in that star system? There's people running about shooting each other, and they don't realize that in another universe we're harnessing their universe to process a game. I wonder if we have an effect on other universes like that.
I think you just use the power of the quantum things, but I don't know where the power comes from, so we don't really know. It might actually be like dark matter and stuff. Who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
Because dark matter, we don't even know where that comes from at the moment. But at the moment, they try to harness dark matter. But what if that could be, you know, a part of different multiverses, just energy floating around?
Yeah, and it makes up most of the universe. I think 70% of the universe is dark matter, which we don't know what it is.
Yeah, so what if we could travel through that time, you know, through dark matter?
Who knows? But I think
light.
that is the future, the dark matter.
Yeah, only if we could understand it. You know, and then the last thing, I guess, was the main thing about this whole kind of topic is we could exist in all multiverses at once. So no matter what, wherever we are, we'll always be in another multiverse. So I'm sitting in this chair right now. In another multiverse, I'll be sitting in the same chair. But there might be one of those multiverses I might be standing up. That's just one example. I could be doing something else and at the same at once.
Yeah. It's if whether you're religious or not, if a family member dies or something like that, or a loved one, it's nice to know that they could potentially still exist, but just in a different universe.
And you're there. You're still there.
And you're still there, yeah. So that is kind of nice to think about in that sense. And I guess we've come to the end of the show. We're out of time here. So again, if you have any questions at all, which you might have, just post them in the comments and we'll answer them as best as we can. I'll put links in there for the documentary and the the video about the dimensions that Harps mentioned earlier, and about the light particles, how everything might not be
try
real.
and find that Simpsons episode as well.
We'll put everything in there.
We'll try.
Yeah.
Cool.
So thank you guys for watching. Give it a like if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you haven't. And we will see you in the next one.
Thank you guys. All right.
Bye.